Hello and welcome to another edition of Box and Ballers. I'm Ben and today I'm joined by Thore, who's a football writer and reporter. He dives really into the tactical stuff. So let's get tactical, Thore. Let's talk about the top six. For you, give us one club that's really impressed you this season tactically.
Well, it has to be Chelsea. Merely because the title was so clearly a result of a tactical change. In fact, it's difficult to find another example where you have one champion that sort of switched the entire system around during the season and improved the results so dramatically. So more than usual, the champions have been champions because of a tactical switch.
Yeah, we're not used to seeing, let's say, the 3-5-2 or the 5 at the back sort of formation with the wing-backs in the Premier League. Apart from this season, Conte made that bold switch with Chelsea to change it up. For you, what else did he do with his side? Was he playing down the wing-backs or is he more playing through the centre? Tell us a bit more about the tactics behind Conte winning the league this season.
Right. I don't know. The first thing he's done is to drill in a very solid system off the ball. So if you look back at his Juventus sides, they conceded maybe 20-25 goals every single season. It was very consistent. And at Chelsea, he's kind of managed to build a similar base. We've been reading stories about him walking their players through their formations and their sort of positions in training until they know by heart, adjusting people even if they're like a few centimeters wrong position-wise. And obviously Chelsea not playing in Europe has given them extra time to do this, but we can only imagine the hours they've spent trying to drill in this defensive shape on the training ground. The system as well gives a lot of players very good roles. Hazard doesn't have to run back as much as he used to under Mourinho, for instance. Victor Moses has a perfect role as a wing-back. Marcus Alonso is a very typical wing-back as well. You can even say that David Luiz is a bit more protected in the centre, and obviously N'Golo Kante is able to play in the central midfield of two players, as he did in Leicester, which is also important. So he's managed to sort of put all the pieces in place just by one switch, which is very impressive. And going forward, obviously, he's changed a lot. Created this sort of determined patterns that repeat themselves all the time, so the players are almost running on tracks, which you can sort of recognize from game to game. And the result is a very solid side defensively that also has a very clear plan going forward. So it's all in all, it's very impressive.
You say they're really well chiselled, but if they say lost Diego Costa in the summer transfer window, which looks like it might actually happen, he's part of their spine. He's part of that spine in that side in the way that the Chelsea team works. Would you say he would be as big a miss, or do you think he's replaceable in the system?
I don't really think he's a perfect striker for the system, mainly because Conte likes his players to.
We're having falling books in the background. They don't agree with you. They don't agree with you, Thore. They don't agree with you.
This has never happened. Must have been some kind of anti-Chelsea material in the background there. At the risk of more books dumping into my head here, I'm going to say that Costa, he wasn't really a perfect player for Conte, because Conte usually likes his players or his strikers to be good with his back to goal.
Yeah.
And Costa is a player who runs in behind the defence or out wide a lot, and Conte sort of has had to tell him to stick to staying in the centre and play with his back to goal, which he's adapted to really well. But if you see the rumours that Conte wants Morata, for instance, that seems like a more natural fit for his system. So if Costa goes, I reckon Conte will be able to find a striker that will suit his system a bit better. So providing they can succeed in the summer transfer market, it should be okay.
Are you telling me, Thore, that Chelsea can get better?
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
If you look at Juventus under Conte in the first season, they went from 7th to 1st, but they improved gradually after that season and reached the peak in the third year, breaking the record and all this in Serie A. So obviously you have the stuff that they're going to play in the Champions League next season and so on, which is going to make it harder. But I mean, Conte has a record for improving teams, so
yeah,
they might get better. but so will obviously the other teams. So
I was going to say, deserved champions definitely this season. Let's wait and see next season. But if they can get better, boy, the league is in trouble next year. It could be 2 seasons in a row for them. Let's move on to second place. Spurs seem to be getting better and better as well under Pochettino. It looks like they've just got the perfect team. Sometimes it doesn't take having certified world-class players in every position in your side to create a brilliant footballing team. Pochettino seems to be proving that right now. I mean, it's a great blend of players for the system he wants to play, isn't it?
it is, yeah. It suits them very well. And you don't have many teams who can sort of switch so easily between 4 at the back and 3 at the back. But Tottenham are able to do this, particularly through having Eric Dyer, who's very versatile, can play in defence and midfield as well, and you can see that Pochettino's been there for 3 years, because they're so well accustomed to his ideas and his systems, and they've sort of reached a sense of fluency that most of the other teams haven't, based on the fact that they've worked with the same manager for so long.
Yeah, and one thing I've got to say with Spurs is they've got so many young players in there as well. So like Chelsea, surely we can only see them improving in the system in the coming seasons.
Yeah, that would make sense if they did. But they've been very good, so I don't know. They should do. They should do. It's very rare to see teams improve for 4 seasons in a row. I mean, they tend to go in like 3-year cycles at most. So it'd be interesting to see whether Spurs will be able to do the same or even go up a level next year. They're going to change stadium, which isn't going to be helpful. Some players, particularly Kyle Walker, has been linked away with the club. So there's a few factors there that might sort of hinder their progress, despite the fact that they are very young and they're up and coming and so on. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, talk to us about the Spurs spine. We've got Alderweireld, we've got Wanyama, or maybe sometimes Dyer. We've then got Ali and then got Kane. How important are those players to this Spurs team?
Very important, very important. They sort of symbolise the hunger and the sort of drive that Spurs have had under Pochettino, and it also helps a lot that they've been playing together for a long time. They don't change, a lot of players every summer. They're very stable, and if anything, Spurs have kind of succeeded despite some of the signings they did last season. You look at Sissoko, you look at Janssen, they've been complete flops. Wanyama has succeeded, but apart from that, it's basically the same side who've just grown together and improved together. So they're very important. And if you remove too many of those, then obviously the team could start to go backwards.
Under Pochettino and the way they're playing at the moment, going into next season, are they genuine title contenders, would you say?
I fear that the stadium move is going to prove too difficult. And I fear that the other teams will improve too much as well under the managers, particularly City and also under Mourinho. So they will start as title challengers, but I fear it can be a difficult year. And I'd be very impressed if they stay in the hunt until May.
Yeah, it could be a very, very long season next season, couldn't it, for Spurs? And there's a phone going off in the background, but we'll ignore that, shall we? Let's talk about, well, we don't really know who's going to finish 3rd and 4th yet, but let's talk about Liverpool, shall we? It seems that Jurgen Klopp is still in 2 minds about which is his best team, which is his best formation. What have you made of Liverpool this season?
Very impressive in the start, and obviously what we do know is that they have a very high ceiling, a very high capacity. When we see Liverpool play at their best, they've been sort of swatting away the best sides, even both home and away. And so the question is whether they can sort of keep that up over an entire season. They didn't manage to do that this season, even without European football. There's a question whether their methods are sort of causing too many injuries, because they do struggle with injuries a lot. Yeah. And more than anything, I mean, the injury of Mane and his participation in the African Cup of Nations in mid-season, as well as other injuries, have sort of hampered their season quite a lot. So I think tactically they're all right. They need to find a few more solutions at home to poor teams, as has been well documented. But this is also down to absentees, and in the very start they were beating Watford sort of 6-1 at home, it wasn't really a problem when all the players were fit and together. So I reckon it's more of a question of personnel and fitness than tactics.
Yeah, more quality down the spine, I think, is needed for Liverpool, definitely in the summer window. But you say that's more the problem than the tactics. What would you say then is Liverpool's best formation? And when Jurgen Klopp goes with that, what sort of football does he try and play? Because sometimes you can see Liverpool playing this sexy, expansive football, but then other times he really tries to get down and dirty in games just to go and scrap a win. So what would you say is the Jurgen Klopp way for Liverpool?
I think the Klopp way is the one that they've been showing when they've done really well, particularly in the start. As we know, Klopp, a lot of pressing, winning the ball high, being very very attacking in terms of pushing players forward, and risking a lot at the back. Defenders have huge rooms to cover, particularly when the other team tries to counterattack. So it's a very risky style, and it comes off the better they get at it. So that is the style. Sometimes he's a bit more pragmatic against big teams in terms of sitting back and protecting the lead and so on, which is only natural. But I think we saw, particularly in the start of the season, what he's sort of aiming towards, and what they might achieve if they get a stronger squad and a deeper squad that can handle a few injuries as well.
With everything that's going to happen in the market this summer, can you see Liverpool doing that? Can you see them, like we said, Spurs a minute ago? Can you see Liverpool being genuine title contenders next season?
I think they need to strengthen a lot. The Premier League, these sort of seasons, they centre a lot on luck as well. So Leicester last season, no injuries, same team every single week. Chelsea this season, hardly any injuries at all, same team every week. And if Liverpool get the rub of the green with no injuries at all, keep the same squad together, get in some really good players, particularly at the back, maybe. But they wouldn't be favourites before this season for sure, because I don't know, they still need a lot, and they're nearly 20 points behind Chelsea, which is just a big distance. So
consistency is the key, and also let's remember they started this season playing loads of away games, didn't they? Because their stadium was still getting sorted out. So maybe that could be a factor next season. Let's chat now, shall we, about City. Pep. A great quote from him this week, which I loved as a United fan. If I was at a big club, I'd have been sacked by now. What have you made of Guardiola's first season? And has he tried to implement that famous style of his on his City team? And how do you think it's working? So many questions, and I suppose there's only a couple of answers you can give us, Thore.
Yeah, it's a big topic. I think the expectations were hyped. Obviously, there were people saying he would revolutionise English football, let alone win the title easily, which hasn't really happened. I think gradually he tried to implement his new ideas really in a really bold way in the start. We saw fullbacks running inwards in field when they had the ball, which is unheard of, particularly in England. 3 at the back, all this kind of stuff, really experimental stuff, and I think he found it far harder than he had imagined. And as the pressure sort of increased on him and the critics have grown and so on, he sort of watered down his style a bit during the season, particularly after, I think it was 4-2 or something at Leicester. And it was sort of a classic case of a really expansive, sophisticated system just being broken apart by a very simple counter-attacking strategy, which everybody knew Leicester would do. And so it seems to have been a bit of a chastening experience, and he's gone with a more sort of standard 4-2-3-1, which is what City played before him anyway. And you can still see some of the Pep Guardiola qualities in terms of possession and pressing and so on, but the sort of wild, experimental, tactical genius that was supposed to take the league by storm hasn't really done what he was supposed to be doing. So that sort of element has been played down a bit. Maybe sort of trying to get into 4th place in the first season and then try to return with his ideas with a stronger squad next season. That might well be, and I think that would happen. But yeah, so far it's been sort of watered down a bit.
See, I was going to say then, I still don't know, and I'm still in two minds after seeing what I saw at the start of the season and seeing what I'm seeing now, whether we can have that Pep Guardiola in the Premier League. Do you think that the Pep Guardiola footballing genius can actually work in the Premier League? Do you think the way he likes football to be played can be played in the Premier League?
I reckon so, but it's a very sort of relative thing, because if you have the players to do it, then obviously almost anything can work.
Yeah.
It's a very demanding style, obviously, as opposed to the stuff Conte is doing and so on. So you can say if you sort of teleport the Barcelona side of 7 years ago into the Premier League, I reckon it could.
Yeah, and sorry, carry on.
It kind of depends on the place he gets in, really.
Right, and I was just about to lead on to that. Who do they need? What do they need? They need 2 new fullbacks, surely. They need another central defensive midfielder. I still feel that they need maybe another couple of attacking players for squad depth. They surely need a centre back, a goalkeeper maybe. They're looking at spending about 300 million in the transfer window, aren't they? At least 250 if they want these world class players in.
Yeah, you can say, and you can say that. What's the point in Guardiola's tactics if you need all these players to make it work? I mean, any tactic works when you have the best players. So that's a reasonable point. But yeah, they need a lot because the system is so demanding. And 2 new fullbacks, of course. Yeah, centre back, particularly one who can play out from the back, and more sort of central midfielders who are good on the ball. Probably a new goalkeeper. So. I mean, there's a lot of building to do compared to what Guardiola had to do in Barcelona and Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
So when he does, and if he gets these players in, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to actually make it work as people have envisaged.
It's going to be very interesting next season. Very, very interesting. Let's move on to another club that's going to have to be busy this summer if they want to get their status back. That's Arsenal. Let's not talk about sort of the genius behind the tactics with Arsenal. Let's talk about where it went wrong this season for Arsenal, where I know it's a little bit negative, but let's face it, some of the football, especially if you disregard the last maybe 2 weeks, there was about a 3-4 month period where Arsenal just weren't there. What was going on with Arsenal Football Club? What was going on the field?
I don't know. I mean, I think they have a higher points ratio than they did last season, so they've actually sort of marginally improved. But the problem is that Arsenal have the same season every year, and so when other teams get better, they just stay where they are, and it's just Groundhog Day every single year. So I don't know. I think they're quite consistent in a way because they tend to beat the teams they should beat, but then always fold against the big opponents. In the period you talk about, they had a lot of difficult fixtures. Bayern Munich. Who they're playing. They had some really hard games.
Sutton United, that was difficult for them.
Which was like that, and Hell was like the only win they had in 10 games or something.
2 wins in 10 games. And to be honest, that sort of led on to Wenger getting tactical, which we don't really see Arsene Wenger changing up his formation much, but he went to 3 at the back as well. He went with the wing backs too. What did you make of that? Is that a different side to Arsene Wenger, or is this just modern day football now?
Well, this is different to Arsenal because he hadn't tried it in about 20 years. I think he sort of spoke a bit about the desperation of the entire situation, that he just had to do something, be that a new thing they hadn't done in 2 decades. It's actually worked pretty well too. They're not very fluent, but they've sort of shored up to the fence a bit and been reasonably solid. But it's desperation, and it's a bit of a strange one because they seem to sort of come into their own when the battle is on for 4th. If I'm not entirely mistaken, they have a bonus for reaching the top 4 as well. So they sort of seem to be more motivated about getting to 4th than winning the title. Yeah, we kind of it doesn't speak too well about the entire motivation of the squad and Wenger and so on. But yeah.
Well, can you see Arsenal setting up like this at the start of next season, or do you think that a few signings will put Wenger back to his normal tactics, back to his normal self?
It's a good question. I don't know. Well, first of all, we have to see whether Wenger will be there. I reckon he will be, but and it depends on the players as well. If Sanchez goes, maybe. And they get a new striker, and maybe the new signings will sort of affect the system they play. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's all about forward planning. Right, finally, let's chat about Jose Mourinho's first season with Manchester United. You've been mixed really in the way you've written about United, but you've also gone very in depth with some of your pieces. If you go and check out Torre, go and check out some of his pieces on Manchester United. Generally, just give us the lowdown and your thoughts on Mourinho tactically at United right now.
So the United project is a very new way of building a team for Mourinho. We know his teams in the past, Chelsea, Inter, and Porto, and so on, have been very functional, very solid. They run a lot. They're very good defensively. They counter-attack, and it's not really been the sort of expansive Alex Ferguson way that United are used to. So, upon being hired by United, he sort of tried to say that, all right, I'm going to try to build this team into a side that's worthy of United's traditions. And he's been talking about this non-stop in the start of the season, that United have to play good football. When they drew at home with Swansea or in the start of the season, I don't know, Hull and Bournemouth and all this. He was sort of emphasising that we're playing well. I've never had so many chances, so much possession, and so on. We have to play attacking football, but we're not getting our rewards. And that's sort of been the main line from Mourinho. Has he managed to do this? There's no doubt that they're better now than a few years earlier. But I mean, you sort of struggle to see whether Mourinho is able to sort of devise this sort of creative, slick, forward passing play in the final third that the best teams are doing. He's never really done it before, so this is a challenge for him to do it now. And he hasn't really been that good, even though they've created a few chances. More recently now, he's changed the tune and sort of saying that United have too many games, we're getting injuries, we're getting tired legs, therefore we have to rotate, and therefore we have to change the tactics. So they've been far more negative now than earlier. And Mourinho's attempt to play this down as sort of logical consequence of all these factors. Some of the away performances have been classic Mourinho, bus parking in terms of putting everybody behind, playing Mata as some kind of right wing back, playing for 0-0. So a bit like Guardiola, he sort of promised a lot in the beginning and then sort of watered it down a bit towards the end.
Do you think that he had a massive job on at United and he didn't realise how big it was? Do you think a little bit like Moyes when he first joined the club, he looked at the squad and thought, yeah, these can't be as bad as people are making out, and suddenly realisations kicked in? And also, for the players we signed and for the big players in the squad, they had a very busy summer. Do you think that there is an excuse that they are knackered?
Yeah, they played a lot of games, but I think Mourinho knew this before the season. He knew all the tournaments they were going to be in, and the Europa League might be their final chance of getting into the Champions League. He always goes for all the trophies anyway, so he's certainly overplaying it in the sense that, they're sort of bound to lose even though they're making a few rotations. But he's great at PR and spin. Mourinho, he's a very good communicator, and I reckon he's sort of bought him a bit more time and patience for sure. Whether they were as bad as they thought, I don't know. I think he's been disappointed with their attitude a bit in terms of in the fact that he's been sort of pushing players in public to recover quicker, to play with pain and so on. Maybe he wants a bit more maturity. Which has been the case in Chelsea. He was complaining that it was sort of, he had a bunch of kids and so on, and he worked a lot on the mental side, particularly in the second season when they won the league. So that might have been a factor. But I think there's no doubt that they had to rebuild a lot, and they still have to rebuild a lot, and they're probably going to change a few things in summer as usual.
Yeah, I think with Mourinho and those calls, there's just because United are used to having warriors. I think he likes having warriors in and around his squad, and I think when you look at that United team, United squad, you're very thin on the edges of having those tough, determined players, those Vidic, Ferdinands, Keane, Scholes, the ones who will do anything for that badge on the shirt. I just don't, but I think that's football in general now. That has changed in general. I think you're completely right with what you're saying tactically with United. Do you think that with a summer transfer window, a bit longer of a rebuilding job, Mourinho will be able to bring that glamorous football to United? Or do you think that it's not going to be about the way United used to play in the traditions? This is the new United. This is Mourinho's United.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I wouldn't put it past Mourinho to try to redefine United in that way. I remember we went to Real Madrid and he sort of tried to. I mean, he was a very abrasive manager and he tried to redefine the entire club values to sort of suit his own style, which is not beyond him at all. I still doubt whether Mourinho has just a capacity to devise a sort of attacking, the way that Ferguson used to do it. But I reckon they can still be a dangerous side, just in a slightly different way, maybe a slightly more direct way. And if you bring in a few more finishes, a bit more creativity and a bit more quality, that can be a really good side. Whether it will be enough for the title, I don't know.
Big summer, no matter what, for Manchester United. Thore, thank you so much for coming on. You need to go and check out some of the pieces on 20-Minute Reads when you get a chance. We'll make sure that we tweet out all your ats and get them on the video description below as well. Hopefully we'll chat to you over the summer as well about players coming into squads and how they affect the tactics and bits and bobs like that. It's been a real insight. Thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you.
We're Boxing Ballers. We've got more videos on the way soon from the biggest talking points in the football and boxing world. Make sure you click subscribe.